hello, KCIW listeners, and welcome to Curry Café. I'm volunteer Rick McNamara with your host, Ray Gary, KCIW's famous radio personality right here in studio. Every Sunday afternoon, we put together a panel of guests, or a guest, as in today, to discuss topics of interest in our community. Listeners can participate in our show by texting in questions or comments to 541-661-4098. Again, that's 541-661-4098. Now, before we begin, I would just like to let our listeners know that KCIW is an all-volunteer community radio station that depends on our volunteers, sponsors, underwriters, and local businesses with their generous donations to keep us on the air. If you'd like to help us out, please go to kciw.org. Speaking of local businesses helping us out at KCIW and Curry Café, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Z-Clean Laundry, located at 1107 Chetco Avenue in Brookings. Z-Clean will wash and fold your laundry within 2 to 3 days after the drop-off and can rush the order if you need it sooner. They can also handle large loads like comforters. They offer dry cleaning and can take care of linen services. KCIW appreciates and thanks them for their generous donation and support for community radio. Okay, I'm going to give it on over to our famous radio personality, Mr. Ray Gary.
Okay, I have good. All right, I can talk. Yeah, okay. Today we only have one guest, and we're going to be discussing a subject that is of immense importance in this community, considering our relevance to the subject. And so I'll turn it over to our guest, and he'll tell you who he is and why he's here. And I don't know, if he owes you $20 or something, you can get in touch with him today by texting him at 451-661-4098.
Try again, Ray. That's 541.
Isn't that what I said?
No, you said 451.
Well,
but that's okay.
Everybody knows. So
okay. I just want to get it
541-661-4098. You can text in a question or a comment or a compliment.
So, Mr. Robert,
yes,
you're wearing the perfect shirt for today's discussion.
Got my Bigfoot shirt on.
Right on.
Thanks for having me, guys. Well, I don't know. What kind of questions do you have?
Do you believe? Let's start out.
Are we going right off the top from
we'll
with
just
Bigfoot?
Start with it. We will.
Well, maybe we should explain to. There are a lot of people absolutely have no idea what Bigfoot is, and I talk about the Patterson-Gimlin film. They have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'll start it off with that. When I was about 13 years old or so, I used to read adventure magazines, men's magazines and stuff. I lived in Boringsville, Long Island, and these were escape things for me. And one day I picked up a copy of, I think it was Argosy, and it had
I remember that magazine.
Had on the cover, America's Abominable Snowman, and I when I read these magazines, I always read these adventure stories with a grain of salt, and I thought, yeah, okay. Well, by the time I was done reading the magazine or the article, I was like, oh, wow. I did not realize, coming from Long Island, that there was this incredibly huge plots of land that nobody's on, nobody goes to, and the possibility of America having an abominable snowman is a possibility. So what the article described was a famous incident that occurred up the road from here. I can't think of the name of the community right now, where there was a construction crew going on. They were building a road or repairing a road or something. And they'd go home for the weekend and then come back up to the site on Monday. That's one Monday they came back, and here's these 14-inch footprints walking around all the equipment like it was inspecting everything. And then, of course, to be a story that fits this type of thing, it had done amazing feats of picking up a huge tire and throwing it off a cliff and walking away with 500-pound.
Right.
Anyway, so one of the guys that was there, when he went back to town, he told a friend of his about it. And I don't know if the friend was a taxidermist or knew a taxidermist. Anyway, this guy taught him how to make plaster casts. And when he made the plaster casts and brought him back down next week, talked in the newspaper. And the newspaper reporter referred to it as Bigfoot, and hence the name of Bigfoot came. And that was, as far as I know, the first really big national exposure of Bigfoot. Before that, in this part of the world, especially to the indigenous community, it was very well known, and people here had been researching him for a long time, but for whatever reason, it never got to the rest of the country.
I think every part of the country has their own.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the downside to me to the story. No, Brooklyn. There's probably one, and living in Brooklyn with they're literally being seen every place.
Prowling the streets of Manhattan.
Well, most of the like you wouldn't notice them on the streets of Manhattan. They could walk right.
That's kind of true, I guess.
Walk right down Fifth Avenue, and if you've ever been to New York, you know what I'm talking about. It would walk, and nobody would even pay a bit of attention to it. It would just keep going. So now I got lost. So anyway, I continued to read about this because the article was good enough that it even, it was easy to convince my little 13-year-old self that this thing existed. And I immediately got all my friends excited about it. I said, when we graduate, we're going to get together and pool our money and buy a Jeep and drive out there and find this damn thing. So
a lot of people have tried.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't because other things got in the way, like jobs. Anyway.
Okay. All right.
So these tracks, which were supposedly later proven to be fake, the guy who ran this crew was a known hoaxer, and he liked to play practical jokes. And he claimed that he strapped these false feet on his shoes and just stomped around the site. This happened after he died, and his family said, "Oh, we traveled all up and down the West Coast making these tracks places." Well, that doesn't really hold up very well because they brought the press in to see all these wooden tracks that he had made, and none of those tracks that he had made and supposedly was using had even looked remotely like the tracks that were at the site. So the site, I think, is still considered to be a legitimate,
I've heard,
Bigfoot situation.
Yeah, kind of back and forth. So, Robert, have you met Bigfoot anywhere?
Have not, and I've been in some of those. I've been in some of those extremely remote areas,
and they are. We do have a lot of remoteness.
Yeah,
my backyard.
The West. Okay.
No, really remote, where people don't have electricity. They have to get everything from solar. I visited a friend's cabin within the last 6 months that's very much like that, and I thought, oh, great. Well, if there's a Bigfoot, there's got to be some way for me to see a sign while I'm here, and I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't. But that's just one isolated example.
I should go on to describe Bigfoot, because if you haven't heard of some of this other stuff, you may not even know what that is. It is conservatively and most accurately described as being somewhere between 6 and 7 feet tall, having these huge feet, covered with hair, similar to a gorilla, but it's nothing at all like a gorilla. It walks closer to a human than a gorilla or any other animal, but not really like a human. It has a very distinct gait and movement.
So, speaking of the distinct gait, that was the film Patterson-Gimlin. We've all seen that, I'm assuming. I mean, 500 times from all the...
we have, but it amazes me when I talk to skeptics at dinner that I said, well, what do you think the Patterson-Gimlin film is? And they have no idea it even exists.
Oh,
so as long as we've jumped to that, in 1967, a guy named Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, two guys who were basically cowboys. They had no great skills of any kind. Roger Patterson was obsessed with Bigfoot and was making a 16-millimeter low-budget film about the search for Bigfoot. Now, his friend Bob Gimlin went along on these expeditions just because he liked to go out on the horses and go camping and stuff. He was not. He didn't particularly believe in Bigfoot at all. And they went out. They were gone for 2 or 3 weeks down Bluff Creek area, which is what I understand about 60 miles as the crow flies.
Yeah, Six Rivers National Forest area, and which is again, beautiful and very, very remote.
Our backyard.
Yeah, and our backyard. That's right. We are living in Bigfoot country.
I know, and I check before I open the door every morning.
Okay, yeah, you're more remote than most of us.
I don't want to get my cat.
Okay.
Where was I?
Oh, about
Okay, so anyway, they went out
the film. I'm sorry.
to document tracks and things like that. And Roger did have a camera with him, a 16-millimeter film camera, in his saddlebags. And both of these guys are experienced horse people. Both of them are rodeo riders, in fact. They come around a bend, and they're sitting, crouching down by the creek is this thing. They don't know what it is yet. And the horses got all excited and reared, or at least Rogers did, but Bob had better control of his. And it got up and walked in front of them. So the very first few seconds of the film are just jumping all over the place, the sky, the trees, because Roger is off his horse now, and he's trying to run towards his Bigfoot to get the best footage he can. Eventually, he settles down, and they get about probably 35 or 40 seconds of pretty good film. This is after it's been stabilized and worked on. And that has been analyzed by just about everybody.
I think
it's probably second only.
Plumbers to scientists.
Second only to the Zapruder film as far as having been examined.
There you go.
It may not even be second to the Zapruder film. I don't know. And there is just no evidence whatsoever that it is fake. Everything that everybody.
Well, hold on a second. Time for me to chime in.
I just told the truth.
Robert made a face, so let's see what Robert
Hold on a
has to
second.
say.
So I come at this whole thing. First of all, background. When I was a preteen, I was obsessed with UFOs and Bigfoot, and
I think most
I even
of us
remember
were.
going to a seminar, an adult seminar, because some UFO specialist came to the town that I was in, and my parents actually let me go. I must have been the only kid in the audience. Anyway, so I found all this stuff fascinating and was reading. You mentioned Argosy magazine. Yeah, I was reading as much as I could about all these things also as I grew up and became educated and learned about the scientific method and actually participated in scientific experiments at my university in this field of psychology. I started to look at this with a more critical eye, thinking, you must prove this. And the reason that I made a face is because you've committed the classic mistake of saying no one's proved that it doesn't exist. That isn't how science works.
No, the film. I said nobody's been able to say the film was show any reason to believe the film was fake.
Well, the mainstream scientific community believes that it is a hox. So
I don't think that's true at all.
Controversy on Curry Café.
The mainstream biological community, or whatever you want to call them, would find it difficult to believe that it exists, as do I. But the film has been, like I said, examined probably as much, or if not more, than the Zapruder film. They've done every test you can possibly do, and they've also interviewed and showed it to people who were in the business, people who did that type of thing for a living in big Hollywood productions. And the guy who did Planet of the Apes, so it was rumored that he helped. And he said, no, I'm good, but I'm not that good. And in fact, he's not that good at all, because the apes and Planet of the Apes don't look at all realistic. And if you want to look at another big budget operation that has apes in it, at the beginning of 2001, where they have these ape-like creatures learning about weapons. And they're not even close to being as good as this film that was made by two cowboys with no budget.
Pretty big beginning of the film, that one, and they look kind of weird to me. But
if you can see, like with the way they hide a headpiece in those days, you put the headpiece on, just have long hair, so you can't see the scene. But you look at them and you can see where the long hair ends. And anyway, it's probably the gold standard for one of the gold standards as to why people will accept the fact that Bigfoot exists.
And back to Robert.
And I don't. However, I guess you could call me a Bigfoot agnostic. So I don't want to swat it out of hand and say this is ridiculous and everything is a hoax. However, coming at this from a scientific perspective, it isn't real until you produce physical evidence that can be studied. And a film is not physical evidence, period. It just isn't. The other thing that I looked up in my research is that scientists will say that because the camera speed and the topography of where that film was shot were not recorded when the film was shot, it's impossible to calculate the gait, the speed, the stride length. Those things are all just guesses because you're just, it's like watching a YouTube video. You're just seeing it, and that's kind of it. So I don't really want to jump into the truth or the validity of the film. Is it real? Is it not? To me, it's just neat and interesting and fascinating, but it absolutely is no proof that Bigfoot exists. And until somebody produces a skeleton or a DNA that doesn't match animals that we already know or in the forest, I'm going to stay in my skeptic chair, just as I will with, aliens having been on our planet.
Okay, as far as the speed of the film and lens length and all that has nothing to do with the way the animal moved and the way the hips were coordinated with different things. And there's half-hour videos just describing the way this creature moved. The other thing is he walked through this riverbed or dry creek bed, which if you've ever walked on one of those, it's full of big rocks and different things. And if you were trying to walk through that with a mask on and something that limits your visibility, you can't do it by just, in fact, we couldn't do that without looking down all the time. But
I can't do it on a flat surface.
But anyway, this guy just kind of cruised right through there like there was nothing to it.
And and if you have a believer, not believer, agnostic, like myself and Robert, I guess, text in 541-661-4098, and we have a text. And it says, thank you, texter, it says, so believing in Bigfoot is like being a wildlife photographer whose equipment is a decades-old flip phone, and your best evidence is a blurry picture of a tree stump. Okay, so there you go.
Well, I did come across, since I'm not talking too much here, I did do a little quick research, and there is actual evidence, solid evidence that this is a hoax. The film is a hoax.
Oh, okay.
Roger Patterson's son, Clint, revealed publicly that his mother told him 10 years ago in 2016 that she knew the whole film was fake. Now, that could just be considered hearsay. But more damning is that the investigators found a 40-second film reel that was shot before the famous Bluff Creek trip that explicitly shows Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin and another individual running a test run with the same Bigfoot costume used in the famous film.
Uh-oh.
So now that's not proof of anything, but that is, if you're going to present the film as evidence, then I am going to give you evidence that is potentially disproving it.
That film, that's a new thing that's being presented, and I'm sure being in the business, you would be very suspicious about how that's being presented and delivered. It's one of those coming soon things. People who saw it say, yes, it's proof that they did this ahead of time or something like that. But one of the things they say is that the film, somebody mysteriously just about this time was going through her father's old chest or something, and he was involved in the whole Bigfoot thing, and she found a 16-millimeter reel of film that had been tucked away there for 60 years. This is the film you're talking about where Patterson's son, who was estranged from Patterson, by the way. They did not get along at all. He claims he saw him burning the suit and all that, but it's not been released. And when it's released, I'll look at it and maybe I'll have a different opinion. But I really don't think so, because there's way, way, way too much evidence to show that this film is not fake.
Well, I think we're stuck a little too much on the film. Oh, whereas I am going to go back and lean on my science skeptic, attitude and say, okay, maybe it is real. Where's the evidence? Where is DNA? Where is a skeleton? It's practically inconceivable that if this creature lives, like Rick said, within 60 miles of us, that no one ever has come up with any kind of body part, physical remains, bones, DNA that can be now analyzed in our, current age of technology to prove that this is not a bear. This is not, something else. And every time that I've seen those tests done on documentaries and shows on TV, every single time it's been determined to be a different animal. So show me the proof.
Well, the proof is definitely not in a television documentary. I've probably seen 352,000 of them, and I watched 3 more this morning on YouTube, and they're all caca. I've never seen one that was any good at all. National Geographic is my favorite. They're always reenacting these things, and then so tonight we're going to sit up and wait, and they're up in a balcony someplace with cameras. Well, nothing happened. I guess it's not true.
Now, you said National Geographic. Was there a documentary on Bigfoot of National?
Yeah, they.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh.
Yeah, believe it or not, they're one of the worst.
Oh, my.
Yeah. They tried to reproduce the suit.
Oh, okay.
And using today's technology, not 1967 technology. And it was laughable what they made. I mean, it was just horrible. The guy there's a guy in North Carolina or someplace who runs a costume and Hollywood effects things, and he claims that he sold a suit to Roger Patterson, and that the suit in the film was the one he made. Now, there's pictures of him with that suit, and supposedly the guy who was in it, we'll get to him in a minute. And it was a joke. It was like something you'd see in an Abbott and Costello movie. It was not meant at all in any way to look like a real animal. It was a joke. And this is what he claims was used. The guy that claims to have been... Okay, there was a guy named Greg Long who wrote a book. Greg Long is an awful writer. The book was even worse. He wrote a 500-and-something page book called... I think it was Finding Bigfoot, but maybe not. He went into this supposedly investigative report with the idea that he was going to find out the stuff. Well, he went into it with an idea and then worked at proving it. He ran into a guy called Bob Hieronymus, who lives in the same town as Patterson. And he said that one day Gimlin came up to him and said he's got a deal for him. He says, it'll take you an hour. We want somebody to be in the Bigfoot contest costume, and we'll pay you $1,000. Oh, hour's work sounds great. That's the hour's work, but he didn't say it was a 14-hour drive to get from Yakima to where those things that took place. He describes going there in Greg Long's book, but he doesn't mention anything about how far it is or anything. His description of where the site is and how you get to it and all that was completely wrong. And he was just bad as far as all that goes. But he also said that he worked with Roger for, I don't know how long, fitting the suit and putting it together and all that. And he says that the suit was made from this hide of a horse that Roger shot. And it was heavy and it was smelly and all this other stuff. Said it came in 2 parts. It came in a lower part that you put on that already had the feet in and everything, and that was tied on, interestingly enough, with a rope. So if you're making this kind of a suit, don't you think you'd want to use suspenders or something more than just a rope? Then the second part was...
You would think.
The second part was including the arms and the hands and everything, and then the third part was a head that he puts on like a football helmet. In order to look more bulky, he has shoulder pads, football shoulder pads under the suit. He says that Roger was able to go to the local high school and get those old shoulder pads because he used to play football there. Roger was 5'7". I don't know that he played much football there, but anyway, so he talks about this suit.
Those little cows, it might be okay.
And how he puts it on, and he puts the helmet on, And in that, his eyes, his description, are 2 or 3 inches away from the eye holes that are, the size of a quarter or something. And because he only has one eye, he was able to donate to the suit his glass eye to be in the right eye, so there wouldn't be a hole there, so it would look more realistic. So, I mean, if you don't have to be a scientist or a suit maker or anything to look at that suit and say, they ain't shoulder pads, ain't no way. And if you're looking through a hole that's 3/4 of an inch, let's give it an inch and a half. And you're trying to walk through that. We all remember when we were kids, we had the Halloween masks that had the little hole like that in. And you were giving a pretty vignetted view of the world. You would not have been able to walk down a rocky trail and just like you were going to 7-Eleven to buy a Coke.
Well, so really, it sounds like this Patterson-Gimlin film was pretty much debunked. And
Wait a minute.
From a non-scientific point of view.
From a scientific perspective, it has been debunked by the vast majority of scientists who have looked at who have really studied this film. So what I just heard...
I disagree with that, by the way.
I know you do. That's why I'm here. What I just heard was Ray presenting a ton of testimony from various people in an attempt to prove that the film is not faked. And I'm going to go back to, that's irrelevant whether the film is faked or not. Nothing, if the film is 100% real, it still does not prove that there's a Bigfoot. Where is the skeleton? Where is the
actual physical
Where
evidence?
is the scientific, what a scientist would require of you to be able to study? And it can't be a film because the film isn't of quality enough that they have studied it and they've looked into the background and they've decided that this is a hoax. But I'm going to even step back from that and not take that strong a position and just say it doesn't matter because until that film does not prove there's a Bigfoot. Okay. Until you give me some physical scientific evidence that scientists can pass around and study independently on their own, then you're not proving there's a Bigfoot. It's a cool film. I get a kick out of watching it. Exactly. It's fun.
Times.
It is absolutely, from a scientific perspective, not proof in any way that Bigfoot exists or exists.
You've lightened up on your original statement. You said that all the scientists have looked at it and said it's fake. They didn't say it was fake.
They have.
I'm sorry?
There's been a consensus that this was a hoax, that the film is a hoax.
I don't know where you got that consensus from. It's not true.
It's some research.
They will say, and I don't blame them for saying that the film does not prove the creature exists because there's no flesh and blood, there's no DNA, there's no anything. As far as never finding a skeleton or a bone or anything, I lived in Alaska for 40 years. Alaska is famous for its bears. I spent a lot of time in the field out on my horses and doing things like that, and I never found a dead bear, and I don't know anybody else that did.
Well,
dead animals, when they die
I think a lot
of
dead bears were found.
Yes, we definitely have found dead bears.
Hit by the cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, that just died.
Okay.
But out in the woods, I've never found a bear that died from
I will admit that I haven't either. But I know they're out there. The dead bears.
They exist.
What happens to animals when they die in the forest is they're not there very long. They get devoured and torn apart and moved around by all sorts of creatures.
Agreed. Now, listen, we do have a text I want to get to, and also we're at the halfway point of the show. So a little break here. I just want to remind folks that you're listening to KCIWLP 100.7 FM in Brookings, Oregon. We are an all-volunteer community radio station. If you'd like to be a part of KCIW as a volunteer, supporter, or both, please go to kciw.org, where you can listen to us live, like this show about Bigfoot, listen to past shows and podcasts, and click on Get Involved, where all the opportunities to become part of KCIW are listed. We really appreciate any help and support to keep us on the air in the Brookings community. And again, thank you, Z Clean Laundry, for sponsoring Curry Café. So we're in the middle of a wild discussion here and we did, let me get this.
Let's hear from our listeners.
Another listener, here it goes. In the edge of widespread high-definition trail cameras, drones, and smartphone photography, the quality of Bigfoot evidence has not improved beyond grainy, distant, or ambiguous captures.
I agree.
Agreed?
That's one of my big problems.
Thank you, texters.
Yeah, thanks for
Probably
that.
Within a 5-mile radius of us, there's 50 trail cameras in people's backyards or out in the woods, and they're pictures, but they're not good. That is one of my big problems with the whole concept.
Well, I do want to talk about one serious person that wrote an article many years ago in the San Francisco Chronicle. He was an outdoors writer. His name is Tom Steenstra. I don't know if anybody's ever heard it. Real famous outdoorsman, great fisherman, hunter, yada, yada. So and I can't remember. This is back in the 80s, I believe, maybe early 90s. He did a 6-week expedition for the Chronicle, him and his brother and a couple other people, and their plan was to go through Humboldt and Tehama counties for 6 weeks, camping and trudging through the wilderness, looking for any sign of Bigfoot, sounds, physical evidence. Nothing was ever found. Now, again, does that disprove 100%? No. But
you can't.
But it just adds to the opinion, if you will, that really there probably isn't a Bigfoot. That's where I stand. There probably isn't.
Yeah, and again, the number or the sheer volume of people that made a serious attempt to try to find something, the fact that they didn't also doesn't disprove that it exists. Just because you don't find anything doesn't prove that it's not there. There are animals that we're finding every year all around the world and having to give our scientific names to because they were never discovered before. So I remain open. As I said, I'm a Bigfoot skeptic.
Yeah, me too.
I'm an agnostic. I remain open to someone presenting real, studyable scientific evidence. But I will also, again, say that simply because hundreds or even thousands of people have gone out on serious expeditions with all kinds of gear, heat sensing cameras and things like that, and haven't found anything, that also does not prove that it doesn't exist.
Right.
But it doesn't exist until you've got something that scientists can study that's physical. A sound, a picture, none of that proves that it exists. You got to have something that scientists can pull DNA from and say, this is not a species we've ever found before.
The scientists have said all along they need a serious body part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh my gosh, we agree.
But something they can get DNA from and everything. Well, I'm certainly familiar with all of the reasons not to believe in it, and like I said before, when I have to convince somebody that living virtually in my backyard, there's a hairy creature that stands about 6 or 7 feet tall.
Or taller. I've heard 8 or 9.
I've heard 8, actually. Yeah, I'm going to argue with you on that one, right?
That gets me into one of the downsides. When you start hearing descriptions from people who say it was 10 feet tall and it had red glowing eyes and it was growling and it was this. And my other favorite is you could feel the ground shake when it walked. There's a lot of people that just... there's a guy who wrote a book that had a lot of that stuff in it that I read years ago because somebody recommended it to me. And I thought, what a piece of crap this book is. And it turns out today he's considered one of the foremost Bigfoot experts.
Well, and back to if there are any texters out there that do firmly believe, please text in. So we haven't heard that yet. But
I thought we'd have 10 or 15 sightings by now.
Oh, okay. So let me jump to that real quick. Not my personal sighting, and there's a very dear family member / friend who did have a personal experience. I'm going to retell it here again with his blessing, and I hope I can remember exactly. It was fairly brief. Him and his brother were hunting in Lake County out of where Clear Lake. Now, that's part of this whole Bigfoot country. I think Lake County, Mendocino,
Yep, from there north, yeah.
You bet. So this is what he said. They were out there, and God, I wish I could remember the name. Middletown area. There's a town there around Middletown. It's pretty remote. So they're hunting. He spies across the canyon what they thought they spy a bear at first, but then he had a scope on his gun. He wasn't going to shoot it, but he looked through the scope, and he claims it was a human-like creature who stood up and apparently faced them. Now, he said the scope was so good he could see the nostrils flaring, which would be kind of creepy, and then gallivant off into the woods. So there's one sighting.
Yeah.
That, again, not me, but a very dear acquaintance.
I love those stories.
Well, I do too.
I can put myself. They're like, but to me, they're like ghost stories that you tell around the campfire. You know, this isn't real, but it's really cool to hear about it. Actually, you don't know. I shouldn't say that.
That's right.
We don't know whether it's real or not. But that's what makes it so compelling. This whole thing. That's what makes it so compelling. We would not be having this conversation if someone had produced proof. This would not be an interesting.
Yeah, correct.
If we had given this thing a scientific name and they found DNA and they've been able to determine that it doesn't belong to an existing species that we've already discovered, this wouldn't be fun and interesting, what we're discussing here.
Exactly.
We do not have proof that it doesn't exist. We also don't have proof that it does exist. Yeah. And that's what makes this so
But there's a lot of
compelling.
There's a lot of evidence that points to the fact that it exists. We didn't get the footprints. Now, footprints, anybody will say, easiest thing in the world are fake. That's not true.
Well, I was going to say, aren't they like crop circles?
You're confusing. That's not physical evidence. Again, that's...
I agree with you. There's no physical evidence. There's no DNA. There's no blood. There's no anything. But that is physical evidence. It's evidence that something who has specific feet. These are not human feet. They're feet that have primate or... great ape characteristics that the average person would not know anything about. Person who's going to go carve up some wood and make tracks. And these many of these tracks have been authenticated by people who have degrees in such things, who are PhDs.
But you can't authenticate a footprint. You can't unless it's got some kind of
DNA that they
flesh or hair that's been left over that you can test.
Right.
Well,
and it's other than that, it's just a footprint. That's all it is. It is not physical evidence.
It's a footprint that is much larger than even the largest humans. Well, maybe not. Maybe a big basketball player.
I was going to say, I've seen basketball players go up to size 22 and 24.
Oh, okay. Anyway, they average about 14, 16 inches long. And they have these characteristics that I was talking about for great apes. And they also have a span of between 40 and 50 inches. And the average human, the tall human, is about 36 inches. So, okay, I'm 36 inches, and I could easily strap on these things and stretch my step to be 45 inches probably or something. But that would look so phony. It would look really, really bad. They wouldn't look like real tracks. And they also walk one foot in front of the other, which is kind of odd. That's not like, if you look at our tracks, they're each to the side of each other.
Well, that's what makes all this so cool and interesting and compelling and fun, as Rick said, to talk about.
That's right.
Because there are little things that we can find that we can't necessarily brush away right away, but that doesn't make it true.
And speaking of tracks, one of the things that wildlife biologists do if they want to check the population of wolves or deer or whatever, is they look for tracks.
Yeah, well, but those tracks of animals that we have already identified and given scientific names to and studied and have.
Right, but it's tracks that they look for as being part of the proof.
No, I agree. I agree.
What we do is just throw out the tracks, throw out the Patterson-Gimlin film, throw out everything, and just say it's caca.
No, that's why we're having a show.
Okay.
There you go.
Because it makes it interesting, but not scientific evidence.
And our text line is on fire today.
Oh, boy.
This is the third. And so far,
I blame myself.
I need to disagree.
The non-believers are winning. So here's the other text. Thank you, texters. Again, 541-661-4098, waiting for a true believer. Text says, why do Bigfoot believers make the best detectives? Because they spent their whole lives looking for clues that don't exist. Well, now, that's...
That wasn't funny.
Well, I don't think it was made to be, but...
I don't know. I liked it.
I used to be a detective, oddly enough.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go.
That was good.
I don't know how you could say the clues don't exist. They do exist.
Clues.
Now, I don't go along with these people that walk through the woods and they say trees that are pushed down and all this crap, and it's pointing the way. But I think there is enough proof to give a strong indication that this creature exists.
Not proof.
That is proof. It's proof that there's footprints. It's proof that there's thousands of sightings, and I know that eyewitnesses is the worst evidence. But there's been sightings where like a whole family has seen them, 4 or 5 people has seen, and there it is, and look what we got.
Yeah.
And Robert, you brought up something. This isn't a perfect, or maybe not even a good analogy, but again, people that are unfamiliar. Well, I think everybody that lives here is familiar with how remote this whole West Coast can be, and I'm talking about all the way up to British Columbia.
Yeah.
Which is where apparently that's where the moniker, if you will, Sasquatch came into play because of some indigenous.
It's an indigenous term, yeah.
Yeah, right. And and Ray, you touched on it. The Bigfoot was because of the gosh darn it, the guy up in the cat skinner who had the footprints. That's where the Bigfoot thing came. That was 1940
the name came from.
Something. Anyway, that's the difference. But they're talking about the same creature. And again, I was going to the analogy. We talk about the depths of the ocean. What are we've only explored like 5% or something like that. And they're always finding new creatures there. But
that backyard's not the depth of the ocean, though.
Well, I was going to say, and it's harder to get to those parts of the ocean than it is to get to all of the remote places on the whole Northwest, including British Columbia. But again, they are extremely remote.
Some of the places. One of the speaking of where they are, one of the downsides that I see to this is a lot of the sightings is somebody is driving like a 199 is actually a famous place for this to happen, and a Bigfoot will run out in front of them as they're going down the road. And I've always thought, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a primate, and it's assumed that it is probably intelligent, but we don't know to what level. But certainly be smart enough not to run out in front of the road on 199.
Yeah, I will say, if it turns out that this is a real thing and it exists, and they find proof of it, I think we know now this thing clearly doesn't want to be found.
Yeah.
So when you say it's smart, it's definitely smart enough to know that it could be in danger if, people find it. I don't know if it's even that deep, but just that it's clearly this thing is really good at hiding. That's why you see the T-shirts that say "Hide and Seek Winner" with an image of Bigfoot on them, right? Because it really is.
Right.
So I don't know if that's because it's not real, or if it's because it's something that we haven't discovered yet that really has a strong interest in not being around humans for.
Yeah. I think any one of the three of us could, if we had the outdoor skills, could go out and spend a month in the forest without being found.
Well, all I'll say is, do I believe there's a Bigfoot out there? I really don't. But if I'm out there camping by myself, and I wouldn't, would I be afraid? Yeah, I'd probably be a little afraid.
I wouldn't be afraid of Bigfoot, but it's just something about being out in the woods in the dark makes you afraid. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And again, we live right in the middle of the Bigfoot capital of the world is, I think, only about 80 miles or 90 miles from here, and that's Little Willow Creek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
off of 299.
Yeah.
I've been through there a few times. Now they have.
And you didn't see any?
No.
How fast were you going? You got to slow down.
I actually wanted. They have the museum there, and it's called. Oh God, let me see the Willow Creek China Flat Museum and Bigfoot Collection. When I went through there last, my plan was, hey, I want to spend an hour or more to check it out, and it was closed, of course, when I was going through.
I think most of these Bigfoot museums are caca.
Well, yeah, it's a tourist.
But again,
it's a tourist trap, basically. It's a tourist trap, clearly, because I don't know what they have. I haven't stopped, but I assume they've got plaster casts of feet, and maybe they've got hair. But all that stuff has been tested by scientists to determine that it's not some unknown species. And if they haven't let scientists test it, then why not?
Supposedly,
why are you keeping this? Do you know this is fake, and that's why you don't want a scientist to claim that it's fake, so that ruins your little tourist trap on the highway?
Supposedly there's been hair that's been analyzed, and it was determined to be a non-human primate. Now, I've read this. I've never seen. That seems like that would be huge news.
Somebody told me. No.
Yeah, exactly. It's
People are saying.
Yeah.
Right on.
A lot of people think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I do know with that, I did what little research on the Willow Creek Museum. They do have the Patterson-Gimlin film you can watch for the 834th time. That we've all seen it.
Speaking of that book that I was so critical of before, Greg Long wrote, who, even though his book is awful, he's now another Bigfoot expert. And one of the things he did was he sat and he watched it over and over again, and he could determine that it had brown eyes. Something like that would have brown eyes anyway, but I've seen the film a few times, and you can't even tell that it has eyes, let alone what color they are.
Yeah, that's a little.
That was to prove that Hieronymus was the guy in the suit because his false eye was brown.
Oh God! See, we just dig deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And
when that book was, I don't know why it's not on Amazon anymore, but it was. There was literally pages of review. I've never seen a book with so many reviews, and probably almost split down the middle of. Some say it was great literature when it was poor writing. And
we're a nation of polls too, I guess, especially lately. But I wonder what the polling would be. They're not going to have a national poll on who believes Bigfoot or not. But I would have to say it would be pretty well skewed to non-believers.
Well, it's the people who know the least know the least.
Okay. And then back to talked about earlier how every I would say country or state, whatever, has their version of some kind of a wild man. I think I've even heard them like down in the South, the Bayou.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's
Swamp
a big
creatures.
big.
Yeah. So Robert, you said you were born in Pennsylvania. Was there anything in the because Western Pennsylvania is pretty remote too, from what
there
I
are
hear.
parts of there are parts of the state. Not just west. There are parts of the northern.
Yeah,
before you get into Canada, it's just trees.
Oh God,
nothing. There's a lot of remote parts, but never ever in the time that I lived there did I
not their version.
Never heard any Bigfoot.
Okay.
All the Bigfoot stories when I was growing up there were all happening here on the West Coast in the areas that you described. Obviously I've heard about the Himalayas. They have a legend of a Yeti, and other areas of the world, but not never heard of anything in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I don't know. That doesn't mean there haven't been, reports of sightings, but nothing when I was there did I ever.
Okay.
Yeah. Every one of the contiguous states supposedly has a Bigfoot, but one of the
and a Loch Ness monster maybe too.
One of the interesting things is Alaska, where you would think would be loaded with them, there are none. Virtually none. Southeast, where it has a relatively mild climate, there's supposedly occasional sightings, but that to me goes to proof, on the proof side.
Oh, yeah.
Not proof, but the plus side.
Right. So like I said, no physical evidence as far as anybody really knows.
Show me the money. I mean, the evidence.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've debated this pretty good. We've got only about 10 minutes remaining. Robert, if we would like to know a little bit more about your background. How new to this area are you, and your background? You have a large, extensive background in radio.
I do.
We would like to hear a little bit about that before we run out of time.
Well, I moved here in 2018 to this area, not
same
to
year
Brookings.
as I did. Okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about that in one of our chats. Radio was something that I wanted to do as a child. I grew up in the I guess maybe close to the very end of the Big Boss Top 40 radio era. All the DJs that became legends, but particularly for me, I was living in the going to elementary school in the San Francisco Bay Area. So for me, the station that made the biggest impact was KFRC.
Dr. Don Rose.
He was my hero.
Okay, I remember that well myself.
Yeah, so I grew up listening to that particular station, and it was just, I loved music as a kid, but just pop music. I remember family trying to get me to take piano lessons, and almost every other time I went to a piano lesson, I would ask my piano teacher, well, can't I play this song by America that was on the radio instead of being pushed toward classical music? But so I've always been into pop music, was a big top 40 radio kid, but the thing I was most enamored with was the DJs, because they just seemed so
I was too,
larger
man.
than life. And how do they do this? This is amazing. Right. They're so cool. They sound cool. And I kind of decided very young age, like 6 or 7, that's what I'm going to do. And so I got to, I guess over time, I got to live my dream, eventually made it to a station in Los Angeles, and just, was so blown away that I was even there.
That's cool.
Did any of you guys were ever exposed to Jocko? Probably a little before your time. He was.
it sounds.
Jocko's Rocket Ship was the name of his program.
Out of where? Back east?
Well, I always thought it was out of New York, but it's actually out of Philly.
Oh, Philly.
Not heard of that.
I don't know how nationwide he was broadcast, but every introduction to every song was like a rap song, like he had a little poem to go along. No. And he had this incredible, wonderful opening that I play on my show once in a while, but I don't try to imitate it because it's way too cool for me.
Well, and Ray has 2 shows on our station that are just both great, awesome shows. They really are, man.
I agree with this. So for once we agree. That's why Robert agrees or not, but if he does, that will be the...
Well, no, that's why you're our famous radio personality.
Yes, he is. Just ask him.
Perfect. But, and like you, though, Robert... like you, I was always attracted to radio. I remember having my little Sears, what do they call that it was a little silver torn thing, and I would have it into my ear and walk in the streets of Sacramento and all of that kind of stuff.
Transistor radio.
Transistor radio. So, I didn't even remember the name. Yes, it's been so long ago.
That is the way I used to listen. Also, I would go to bed. I got one as a birthday gift one year, and I got that as a gift with the little, the 9-volt battery.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And I would put it under my pillow and, listen to it falling asleep every night.
Oh, yeah. God, well, we
I could get...
So it was
there. We were about
bleeding
10 or so
into my
years
brain.
apart, but still, I know.
Yeah. I lived about 40 miles out of New York, and I could get all these great shows late at night coming out of Harlem and stuff like that.
Yeah. God.
Oh, yeah.
Radio, I think radio was a great thing.
One of my favorite Queen songs is Radio Gaga.
Okay.
I love the words today.
Okay. And Robert just started hopefully it goes, a music bingo show at the Chetco Brewery that was a big success here just last Tuesday.
It was. We were blown away.
Stuff with all kinds of different music, and that I hope that's going to continue.
It will. I don't have details, but it will definitely be back. I've been assured by the owners it will definitely be back.
Yeah, that was a fun time, man. And again, everybody, I say everybody loves music. That's not a correct statement, but I think most people do, and everything associated with it.
I think you have to be very careful with that. I've, through my life, met maybe fewer people than I can count on one hand who told me, I just don't like music. And I felt like I was talking to an alien.
Right.
What? Like, how, what?
I know. Yeah.
No music at all?
Right.
Classical?
That's crazy. The big difference is, though, and I tried to write into a couple of radio stations when I lived in Sacramento, that they said, hey, if you want to be on the radio, write us. And I tried to send in a letter. It just never happened. But obviously, Robert, it happened to you very early.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those examples of you, and for all you kids out there, it's an example of you got a dream and you don't let it go, and it kind of seeps into your pores and your brain, and it becomes a part of you. And what happens is, and I only can say this because it happened to me and I can look back on it. What happens is every time you see an opportunity that will take you a step closer to that dream or that goal, you jump on it. And as long as that dream is in your head all the time, every time you see, I can take a step toward that by doing this, you just jump on it. You don't hesitate. And, over time, that's how, that's kind of, there's work involved, obviously. But a lot of the time, it's just really jumping on the opportunity when it's presented. Sometimes you have to make the opportunity. But
and if that opportunity you're looking for is in radio, this is a good place to start. Yeah. When I was about 10 years old, I was enamored with Alan Freed and...
Now, that name I remember.
Little Richard and all those people. I thought the greatest thing in the world would be to be a disc jockey. Then I found out you had to go to school and stuff, so that kind of went away. But when I came here as an adult, I got to be a disc jockey, doing my own shows, playing my own music.
Right on.
Not what the computer told me I had to play. And
freeform, a little more freeform.
The other night we were watching a movie about a guy. I got reluctant to bring it up because I can't think of his name. He was evidently a famous guy. It was a black DJ who was extremely radical.
Okay.
And anyway, and he's playing songs he wanted to play, and I turned to my girlfriend. I said, "Boy, I really miss playing music."
Well,
because I like to play music that said something.
Yes, yeah, as in your show, What's Going On?
Yes,
a lot of that. Hey, man, and me too. I see. I've been here, I think, a little over 2 years now. It was my first thing ever to do radio. Was right here, and no, I'm not getting paid, but I don't. I don't care. We don't.
Wait, what?
Surprise!
Am I in the wrong place?
Surprise!
But the benefits. Got to look at the benefits.
Hey, man,
don't just be money hungry.
Well, right, and this is this community is wonderful, and I just get a lot. We all get a lot out of this. I think just having fun doing radio, man, like I always wanted. And back to the San Francisco Bay Area, Robert, you were talking KFRC. Yeah. Now I know I think we're a little over. About 10 years apart, but still. The station out of San Francisco that I also remember was the KSAN, KSAN.
Yes, and that was Freeform FM rock radio.
FM, I think that was fantastic. I used to listen to that all the time.
Well, the only correct me if I'm wrong, but the only way you could listen to FM radio in that same era that I was growing up was you had to have a full-blown stereo system.
Well, right.
Because at that time, you didn't have little handheld FM radios, at least at first, when FM first started. So, so that was a whole different kind of culture, the FM freeform thing. I never got to really listen to it because I was just a kid with a,
but still. No.
Transistor radio.
And again, I didn't live in the Bay Area, but
it's amazing how much better that music sounds on a reel. I can never.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't remember the name of the song right now, but I bought the CD, and after listening to it on the AM or even FM radios, and I listened to the CD, I said, oh, wow, there's so much in there that I couldn't hear.
Yeah, and Sacramento had their own version, KZAP, KZAP. God, every time I changed cars back then, and I always changed cars, I had to get the KZAP cat sticker because I thought that was the coolest thing. And in the other radio station, it was out of Gilroy, KFA, KFAT. Do you remember one about that? Had a lot of the, I call it rockabilly stuff. Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks and
not familiar with it. No.
Okay. That was out of Gilroy, and it was a cool little place station. Well, listen, Robert, we're almost out of time. Thank you very much for coming on and
thanks for having me, guys.
Battering the Bigfoot question back and forth.
Yes.
Obviously,
I think we accomplished a lot.
Oh, right. The texters were all non-believers, so we got that far.
Oh,
but that's okay. Well, we had a good time as always, and again, glad Robert is a volunteer here too, and we're glad he's here.
And thanks to the people who took the time to text.
Oh, you bet, man.
It's great to have participation.
Yeah, it's the fun part of it. So, okay, we're heading out of here. Thank you all for listening to KCIW 100.7 FM here in beautiful Brookings, Oregon. And we'll be back next week for another exciting show.
And keep that text line handy in case you run into a Bigfoot next week or two.
Yeah, if you run into a Bigfoot, call us immediately.
Yes, and get some proof because some people won't believe.
Right on.